Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is 71 years old and still strong, sharp, and energetic. A big reason for his health success is because of his lifestyle. And I'm Lillie, I'm a certified nutrition health coach, and today we are going to talk about what RFK Jr. eats in a day, his daily lifestyle habits, and what science says about what he's doing and why it works.
A lot of people want to know, what's the Bobby Kennedy diet?
It's a carnivore diet, so it's mainly meat and all kinds of fermented vegetables.
Yes, RFK Jr. eats a meat-based diet, high in protein and healthy fats, and he has some fermented foods that are great for the gut microbiome. And I was just kind of mind blown, honestly, that he used the word carnivore, because sometimes I feel like the word carnivore gets a bad rap because people are like, oh wow, like that's so much meat, especially when in mainstream meat is associated with cancer and heart disease. And so I thought for sure when RFK Jr. used the word carnivore, the media would latch onto that word and run with it and call him like a crazy caveman or something. But the reality is the caveman diet is making a comeback, okay? And I'm all about it. I actually was recently on a vacation in a tour group where there was 45 other random strangers from all over the world who, at breakfast time, when I was piling up my plate of meat, eggs, different sausages, bacon, cheese, yogurt, to me, it didn't seem abnormal, but other people on the trip started looking at what I was eating and they would make comments like, wow, 6 eggs, that's a lot. Or, are you eating a carnivore diet? Are you eating paleo? Are you eating keto? I was actually really happy to see that people are knowing these words, aware of these different eating approaches. You know, it's weird for me to say eating approaches because it's just whole foods. Nothing on my plate looked that abnormal. And so the fact that people would look at it and then be like, whoa, she must be on a diet because there's no breads, croissants, muffins. That must have been the thing that really stood out to people. And it was awesome, though, to see how many people were willing to listen more and hear, yeah, eggs are great. Meat is awesome. And butter, it's not the villain.
Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. believes saturated fats have been unfairly demonized, particularly dairy products like whole milk and cheese, and wants them back on our tables.
New dietary guidelines that are common sense that stress the need to eat saturated fats, dairy, fresh meat and vegetables.
I can imagine how confusing it is for people who for so many years heard to avoid saturated fat and avoid foods that have cholesterol in them. And now hearing, wait, no, have more saturated fat, have butter. You guys say my pillows look like little butter cubes. Have meat, have eggs. For some people, that's going to be really confusing and hard to wrap their mind around when for so long they had heard the opposite message. And this might be helpful to consider that nowadays we have rising rates of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, and yet people are having less meat and eggs and butter than they were in the past. And so how are the foods higher in saturated fat and cholesterol the culprits of these rising rates when people are having less of those foods? Humans need healthy fats. Healthy fats like those found in beef, in salmon, eggs, dairy, butter. Healthy fats are so critical for our brain function and for our hormones. So I love that it's now starting to come around where people are being more encouraged to have more fats, especially when we're seeing rising rates of things like different hormone conditions, PCOS, infertility, different neurological disorders, things like OCD, depression, anxiety, Alzheimer's, things that might and could be positively impacted with some more healthy fats added into the diet. Now this next part's crazy to me because as I was doing research for this video, I ended up learning that RFK Jr. at one point had mercury overload. He says that he loved having a tuna fish sandwich every day and perch fish, and then he ended up getting his mercury levels tested.
You had your own mercury levels tested and you were like 10 times the amount of what would be, considered dangerous to a pregnant woman. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but
I was starting to have word retrieval problems and memory problems, and that I'd never had before. And I'd had a photographic memory, and that began to dim, and that was very disturbing to me. And that's why I started doing tests. And then one of those doctors found that I had enormous levels of mercury. You know, I'm a fisherman, and I fish, and freshwater fish, as it turns out, are really heavily loaded. You know, fish like trout that we like to eat.
Too much mercury can lead to memory loss, difficulty focusing and being able to concentrate, headaches, high blood pressure, and the list goes on. And I used to be a tuna lover until I found sardines, which you guys probably think I'm sponsored by sardines. I'm not, I should be, but for people who are nervous about trying sardines, they taste very similar to tuna. They look like, yes, little fish fillets, but if you are nervous about looking at them, then you can just open the can, drain the water out, and then put the fish into a bowl and mix them up with, some people do hot sauce, relish, some people do seed oil-free mayonnaise. And if you just mix up the sardines, it looks like tuna and it tastes very similar. Sardines have less mercury. They have more omega-3s, which are great for brain function. They have more vitamin D, more calcium, and they're more affordable than tuna. So it's like a no-brainer to go with the sardines. The smaller fish tend to have less mercury, and so a good acronym, they're called SMASH fish, which means sardines, mackerel, anchovies, salmon, and herring are all the fish that tend to be lower in mercury. RFK Jr. also doesn't drink alcohol, which I think is another big factor that contributes to his energy, sleep, and hormone health. I myself am not a big alcohol drinker. It's expensive, makes me feel nasty, and I don't like the taste. But from a health perspective, I've also tracked my sleep before when I have alcohol, even if it's just a small amount, and whether I have that alcohol sip at 7 p.m., 3 p.m., or 12 in the afternoon, pretty much no matter what time you drink it, when I lay down for bed, it shows that my heart rate variability or my different heart markers and sleep quality is not as great. It actually looks really, really terrible. So I have never been a huge drinker, but when I did see on my sleep scores how much it's impacted my health in that way, it just makes it even harder to even want to have a sippy. Yes, I said sippy. Actually, I think if someone's trying to lose weight, the first thing I would do would be cutting out alcohol. I think if you're trying to lose weight, cutting out alcohol is like the fastest way to do it. I tried looking everywhere to see if RFK Jr. ever talks about any supplements that he takes, as I thought for sure I'd be able to find something with him talking about vitamin D, but I couldn't find any video anywhere.
I take a lot of vitamins. I can't even list them to you here because I couldn't even remember them all, but I take a ton of vitamins and nutrients.
I actually believe that people don't need tons of supplements in order to be healthy. They should be able to get the bulk of their nutrition from food. The only exceptions being things like vitamin D and magnesium. It's just really hard to get those particular nutrients from food. Those would be the only two nutrients I think most people would want to consider supplementing. But other than that, I would optimize with food. I personally take 5,000 IU of vitamin D3 daily, and if I'm ever feeling sick or I'm traveling, then I will load up on more vitamin D and I'll take upwards of 10,000 IU daily, but the 5,000 IU helps me maintain my vitamin D levels. Vitamin D is so crucial for our immune system, hormones, and energy. And then with magnesium, I take upwards of 500 milligrams a day, which might sound like a lot to people, but our soil health isn't as rich in minerals like magnesium. Therefore, the plants growing and the animals who eat the plants aren't as rich in magnesium. But then on top of this, when we have more stress from work and family and politics, and stress from being on our cell phones all day, being stimulated by light and 5G and Wi-Fi and dopamine hits, studies show that when people have more stress, their body actually uses more magnesium. And so people may be reaching for more magnesium nowadays than in the past because, one, we're not getting enough through our food system, but then on top of this, we are a little bit more stressed than we used to be. And magnesium is so critical for our sleep, nerve, and heart function, and blood pressure. And the magnesium I take is through Bioptimizers, who is today's video sponsor. unlike most magnesiums that just have one form of magnesium, Bioptimizer's magnesium has 7 forms of magnesium, including glycinate, citrate, malate, taurate, orotate, chelate, and oxide. This is the only brand on the market that has 7 forms of magnesium in it. So to me, it's like my magnesium multivitamin in the sense that I'm getting all of these different forms of magnesium that do different things. For example, magnesium glycinate can help with sleep and relaxation. Magnesium citrate can help with digestion, with constipation. Magnesium taurate can help with the heart and blood pressure. So there's all these different forms of magnesium in it. And if you'd like to support this channel and get 15% off of Magnesium Breakthrough, then go to the link in the video description, bioptimizers.com/Lillie Kane, or insert discount code Lillie Kane at checkout for that 15% off.
I don't want to take food away from anybody. If you like a McDonald's cheeseburger or Diet Coke, you should be able to get them. If you want to eat Hostess Twinkies, you should be able to do that. But you should know what the impacts are on your family and on your health.
Isn't it interesting how with cigarettes, there's a warning label. With alcohol, there's an age restriction. But then with processed foods, the only thing they got on the front is a Happy Lucky Charms guy and Fruity Pebbles guy saying, "Eat me, eat me." Imagine if on processed foods, there was a label that said could cause obesity, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's, gut inflammation, psoriasis, infertility. And I think that if people really had it where they had to see a waiver or a warning sign, then it could discourage people from having these things as often, because we saw with cigarettes, there has been a significant downturn where people aren't smoking as much as they used to in the past. So I agree with Bobby that people should be allowed to smoke and drink and eat ultra-processed foods, but at least let's give them more of a warning and let them know what they're putting into their bodies. Though RFK Jr. also doesn't eat perfectly, yet he's still very healthy. And I wanted to bring this up because there's a lot of people who tend to be intimidated to even try to eat healthy because they think, well, I've got to be perfect all the time. Otherwise, what's the use? Though Bobby shows sometimes you can have fast food and you can still feel and look great, especially if you exercise.
I hike every day, and I hike uphill for a mile and a half up and a mile and a half down with my dogs. I do my meditations, and then I go to the gym, and I go to the gym for 35 minutes. And what I found is it's sustainable if I do just a short periods. And I do 4 different routines at the gym, and I never relax at the gym. I go in there and I have a very intense exercise. I do back one day, chest one day, legs, and then a miscellaneous. I try to reach failure at 12 reps.
I think food plays a huge role in someone's overall health, but then exercise is also a critical component to building muscle, having more strength, helping with heart health. And so I love that RFK Jr. is demonstrating the power of exercise, especially as you age. And you can always start. I know people who are in their 70s who are starting to exercise again. And so it doesn't matter the age. Let's just get walking, moving, dancing, grooving, and lifting some weights or a heavy box or a grandchild or something that's going to help put on the muscle. Now, I saved this for the end because less people tend to watch to the end, and I was unsure if I wanted to say this, but hopefully me saying this is helpful for you and me, which is I think RFK Jr. is healthy. He's got muscle, he has energy, though he does look a little bit older than other people who I know who are in their 70s. And I say this because I think that RFK Jr. has had so much more stress than most of us have in our lifetimes. He's in politics. I can only imagine the ridicule, the judgment, the death threats, the different hearings he's had to go through. Like, he has gone through so much. He looks great for how much he has had to endure. Though the takeaway lesson is my mother-in-law is 77 and she looks great. And I think a big reason for this is she tries not to have a lot of stress, to worry less, to not take life too seriously. She tries to, not control everything and give things up to God. And so I think a big overall lesson is, yes, let's eat healthy, let's exercise. And we do need people like RFK to be taking the reins and doing things that, I don't want to be doing. So kudos to him. But I think that if we also work on our stress levels, that can make a huge impact on our overall health. If you're looking for more support on your health journey, I do offer one-on-one health coaching. I'll leave a link to that in the video description. And if you enjoyed this video, surely you're going to want to check this one out. Don't be silly, subscribe to Lillie, and I'll see you in the next one.